welcome back. How
Yeah.
y'all doing? Welcome back. Welcome back. I appreciate my damn. I appreciate my new subscribers. Thank you so much for believing in me. I just got back from doing Amazon. I'm glad it was close to the house, but y'all, I'm tired of working two jobs. I really am. I'm so ready to retire. And I just ask God bless my channel because I like doing this. I really do. I like doing YouTube. So in this video, we getting back to celebrities and people leaving America. Some leaving because of Trump, and then others are leaving because it's just too high to live here, and it really is. Whew. As I said in the last video, because this part two is going to be a 3, 4, and a 5. Couple black folks left and they moved to Puerto Rico. Love it. And Puerto Rico is beautiful. I had a ball. And I said I would love to live there. The people are so nice and friendly. San Juan is it. Waking up every day at the ocean was just wow. And then you got a black couple moved to Egypt. Shoot, you can get an apartment in Egypt for $78 to $200 a month. Fabulous. Fabulous. Another black couple, well, black man moved to Vietnam. $500 a month. Beautiful. And can have a chef and a maid. Other countries you can live well with little. Because what it costs you here is more than half that you would pay over there. And the food is better. The water may not be better, bottled water, but the food is better. It's organic. You buy your meat and vegetable fresh at the stand. I'm just saying, my top five, and I'm moving down south. However, my top five is first Belize, Antonique, Barbados. They haven't had a hurricane since 1955. Bali, maybe I meet Russell Simmons, and Fiji. But they say Fiji is expensive, but it probably ain't our that expensive for us. But they all speak English because I'm too old to try to learn another language. So let's get off to it. For some, the American dream lies overseas. The big picture, as recent polling suggests, a dwindling sense of confidence in the American dream. Some U.S. citizens are flocking to foreign countries in search of more affordability and flexibility. Let me change this name. No, I guess I'll leave it. And that's a fact because I want to leave. Okay, so here's a survey. Only 33% of respondents said the American dream defined in this case that if you work hard, you get ahead, still held true, per a North Pole from October. Meanwhile, young Americans are struggling to get on the housing ladder, and Americans of all ages are increasingly pessimistic about the opportunities that will be available to the next generation That's a fact. I'm seeing it now on my main job. What they're trying to do there. Hmm. You know what? I'm gonna put a subtitle. American Dream is dead. Hold on. I'm gonna put it up here. Okay, I'm gonna change that to that. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I like that. Excuse me. At the same time, opportunities presented by remote work and expat lifestyles reflecting social media posts have led to Americans leaving America. Since 2020, there's been a rise of digital nomad visa per the Europe-based law firm Lexity. Dozens of countries now offer a visa pathway enabling remote workers to legally reside in the host country for a year, plus under certain conditions. Across social media sites, including TikTok, some Americans are documenting their new lives and they are living their lives outside of the U.S. while expressing shifting attitudes about the American dream. Facts. J.P. Stonestreet and Amelia Bassett, two married couples who left Colorado to move to Ecuador in 2017, now run a business for helping people to live abroad and earn online income. What they're saying, we grew up in a country of opportunity for everybody. If you were smart and worked hard, you could achieve the American dream. And this is not the case anymore. Sure ain't. It just takes one unforeseen incident to completely change that and take the dream away from you. That is a fact, said Stonestreet, who cited high living costs in the U.S. as a major part of the couple's decision to leave. Stonestreet and Bassett said they have seen a large increase in the number of people both thinking about and making the decision to move. Get the help. That's a fact. Most of their online followers are people near or at retirement who realize they cannot afford to live in the U.S. anymore. That's me. And are seeking a higher quality life for a lower cost of living elsewhere. That is a fact. Though the two remain, oh, let me make sure. Okay. Though the two became marred in medical, student loan, and credit card debt prior to leaving the U.S., the pair is now debt free, living in Ecuador. See, this is what I'm saying. We got to get the hell out of here. Both in their 50s, the two said they are aging in reverse, which they mostly attribute to reduced stress from living outside of the toxic hamster wheel they refer to as the U.S. There is no data from U.S. federal agency that explains the true extent of Americans leaving the states for life abroad. The State Department estimated that 9 million U.S. citizens lived overseas, but according to a department spokesman, the agency no longer provides those estimates. U.S. citizens are not required to register their travel with the department, and the spokesman told Axios that the agency does not want to provide potentially inaccurate figures. It remains the case that many more people are seeking to move out of the U.S. than away from it. But like Trump said, if you don't like the U.S., you can leave. You can leave. No, no, Jack. But for younger generations of Americans, the world beyond the U.S. has grown more easily accessible and perhaps more appealing. Okay? Americans think the American dream is dead. Americans are increasingly unlikely to believe that those who work hard will get ahead and that their children will be better off than they are, according to two recent polls. Why it matters. The polls reflect concerns that the American dream is dimming or already extinguished. 36% said it holds true, 18% who said it never held true, and 45% said it once held true but not anymore. I'm in the 45%. Compare that to surveys in 2012 and 2016 when 53 and 48% said the American dream held true. The American dream is dead. It's hard to attain right now. Women were more pessimistic about the state of the American dream than men. Compared to previous polls, while younger people were much more pessimistic than people over 65, because we about to die, compared to previous polls, the percentage of people who believed the American dream was never a reality more than doubled. Yes, but an Axios Latino poll last year found that 61% of Latinos believe that if they work hard, they can achieve the American dream. America's enormous wealth gap is often cited as a reason for the decline in faith in the American dream. That's a fact. A 2022 Brookings analysis suggests America is now the less a meritocracy than some other wealthy countries. Wealth inequality is high and wealth status is sticky. But other scholars note that Americans over the generations have tended to be better off than their parents. Not anymore. It's not happening anymore. Another metric by which the American dream could be measured. Americans are now increasingly worried that the trend won't hold going forward. In a recent poll, a record low 19% of respondents said they were confident their children's generation would be better off than their own. Not anymore. The way we live in the U.S. is not normal. That is a fact. When we was in Puerto Rico, people was enjoying the beach. They was enjoying their lives. They don't work. They relax and have fun and work all at the same time. They not working themselves to death. This is an essay. Um, I don't remember exactly when it happened for me, but the thought arose with surprising clarity. Something is deeply wrong with the United States, and I don't want to live here anymore. Facts. I feel that. When I tell people this, they nod knowingly and say something about the 2016 election. While that critical turning point sped up my timetable, the realization that something fundamentally was off in this country of my birth actually began years before that. When I met Robert, now my husband, in 2015, I became a beneficiary of his love affair with Italy. Though I was well traveled and had been to Italy many times, I have never really gotten to know people who live there. Though many visits and conversations with Robert's friends in Italy, who became my friends, believed it might be time to leave the U.S., slowly solidified until it became almost the only thing I could think about. The United States, where people don't revolt at the notion of college education costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. They don't revolt at nothing. They really don't. I wonder why so many people treat it as so completely normal that we have a GoFundMe campaigns to help people pay for life-saving medical care that their health insurance won't cover. I watched as people on social media claimed it was pro-labor to tip a person for ringing up your order at a food or coffee chain rather than demanding the multi-millionaire or billionaire owner of that company pay their employees a living wage. That is a fact. as is the norm in Europe, where tipping is not expected, and the owners of restaurants and stores are typically not among the ultra wealthy. I realized that there are other places in the world, not just Italy, where life isn't about conspicuous consumption and crushing and killing your life goal. That's what I just said. I realized that when I was in Puerto Rico, where people aren't drowning in debt just to pay for basic life necessities. There are places where people have a good life. I also began to notice how calm I felt in Italy for extended periods, even when working from there. So it wasn't due to being on vacation. I could feel my nervous system settle. I noticed how I began to find a famous Italian inefficiency charming. It was a kind of quiet rebuke to the productivity fetish in the United States, where businesses are forever trying to optimize and streamline to please their shareholders and enrich their CEOs. That is a fact, making life increasingly miserable for their employees. Yes, yes, yes. One turning point was a dinner with our friends Francis and Ed, who had lived in Italy for half a year for decades. They brought along an American friend who had moved from Brooklyn to Tuscany to open a hotel a decade prior. I asked if she ever considered returning to the United States. She said no. She would never raise her son in the United States unless they changed the gun laws. She didn't want her child to be slaughtered at school by a lunatic gunman and listen to people chalk it up to the price you pay for freedom, as though people in other countries are not free because they don't own an assault rifle. All right, this is not normal. We don't have to live like this, and we don't. She felt safe in Italy and didn't worry about her child going out to play the way parents in the U.S. do. She enjoyed the easy pace of life, connecting with the town's community, which gathered nightly to walk in the town square and casually socialize. It sounded like a fairy tale. Another clarifying moment occurred on a flight home in 2016. I was seated next to a Danish woman, a former mayor who was part of an international contingent observing American democracy in action. People in Denmark often ranked the happiest in the world. I asked her if this was true. She said she didn't know if they were the happiest, but they were happy. She ascribed this to the fact that their basic needs were met. Nobody worried about running out of money for retirement or whether they could attend college or afford health care because education was free, life was affordable. People chose careers based on their passions. Oh my God! Rather than on earning potential. Yes, they paid 50% in taxes, but didn't worry about having what they needed. So had they check went to taxes, but they had everything was free. Nobody graduated from college saddled with debt of a small nation. To show you how much the government thinks about how to serve the people right now, they are debating whether they should pay for women in nursing homes to have their hair done since it's part of their dignity. You can't make this up, she said. Older people are respected and cared for in Denmark in a way they are not in the United States. Yeah, we got to get the hell out of here. That's my next move. Moving down south and then out the country. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to not worry about many things on her list. While Denmark's government is more functional than some other European governments, including Italy, the view that people should have their basic needs taken care of is typical of the continent. What are considered entitlements in the United States are rightly understood as human rights in these countries. Wow. I should know that there are other countries and continents to check out if Italy or Europe isn't on and it's not on my list because it get cold. My therapist moved to Panama after she found a group for black expats on Facebook and discovered Panama would be healthy and safer place to raise her son. I recently listened to the Quitted podcast by Emily McDowell and Holly Whitaker, Recovering about Black American woman moving to Grenada, and found it extremely inspiring. In October 2019, Robert and I spent a month in Italy while he worked on an article for National Geographic. I was extremely burnt out. I was in the thick of it at CNN, coming off 2 years of utter insanity in the U.S. political world. It was exhausting and also frightening at the same time. On a more personal level, I was frustrated by the lack of meaningful friendships in Washington, D.C., where we live. Everyone was hyper busy, overworked, and stretched so thin that it was hard to find the energy and the time to have the kind of regular, casual conversation or connection that used to be commonplace even in the cities. That is so true. While in Italy, I signed up to take on Pilates classes from an Italian woman in her late 30s. As I shared my frustrations about life in America and how lonely it could be, she explained that when she left that evening, she would stop to see her friends as she walked home, a glass of wine with one, perhaps dinner with another. None of this was planned in advance. It, if you showed up at someone's house in Washington, D.C. unannounced, you would be considered a sociopath. I am not exaggerating. Perhaps you could do this once, but if you did it more than once, people would think you were a problem. In major U.S. cities where I spent my adult life, getting time on a calendar to get together with friends resembles something akin to scheduling a space launch. That is so true. I was very much feeling that Rosie Spinks shared last week, the friendship problem. She writes, schedule around travel, wedding weekends, and kids' work commitments, and then cancel right before. Someone doesn't follow up or cancel, they never propose an alternate plan. Promising new adult friendships never seem to blossom into the kind of quantum check-ins and week-to-week euphoria that the friendships of younger years is based on. Lifelong friends make new life choices, drift apart. The friendship fizzles into WhatsApp back and forth, and then someone doesn't answer the last message, and then it's a year before you talk again. Perhaps people in smaller U.S. towns can still drop in on friends and don't spend half their time lives planning get-togethers. But Italy is not. Trieste is not a small town in either size or demeanor. It's sophisticated with about 200,000 people, filled with ancient architecture, fine dining. It's a stone's throw from Venice to the west. Wow, wow. And it's the capital of Friuli, Venezia Giulia, one of the best white wine regions in the world. No city like this is in the United States exists where people, including Pilates teachers, are not hyper busy and burnt out. Actually, there is no city in the US like Trieste, period. But that's for another essay. A few days before we flew back to the US from Italy, we saw our friends, Francis and Ed, for dinner. I was not much fun as I had developed a throbbing pain in my jaw. I found out when I got home a few days later that I found when I got home that I needed a root canal and the bill was $5,000. It would be hard to overstate my shock. Insurance didn't cover this, so I had to pay out of pocket. This was a big financial hit and I was well paid. How could the average person afford this? They can't. Facts. Which is why so many people get trapped in medical debt after being forced to put critical care on a credit card. Come on, girl. Ed told me later he had the best root canal of his life in Italy, costing $500. On our most recent trip to Puglia, we met a very successful Italian dentist at the dinner party, and he said he would charge around 250 euros for that service. I've heard many stories like this and other types of medical care in Italy. Mm, mm, mm. The same is true of health insurance. I could buy a year's worth of health insurance in Italy that would be lower than my monthly premium in the United States. We got to get out of here, y'all. And no, the US is not more expensive because it's a better system. There are many things that Americans have been brainwashed about, but nothing comes close to the sacred delusion that the US has the best health system in the world and that Western Europe is some backwater substandard care. But it's more than just health care and education are affordable in Italy. It's that everything is more affordable than in the United States. Mm. Life in the United States keeps getting increasingly expensive to the point that simply doesn't make sense. Come on now, we got to get out of here. On a trip we just took to Pergola, produce from the grocery store and farmers, all organic for real. Mm, mm, mm. It's not just that houses everywhere are expensive and interest rates are high. It's that these houses are delusionally overpriced. That's a fact. Even if I had the money, I would not pay $1 million or more to live in homes that pre C-19 were selling for $450,000. When I was growing up in the United States, a capitalistic country, but there are guardrails. Call it hyper capitalism or late stage capitalism, whatever you want. There is no longer any slightest sense of decency. Now, there is no shame of making $800 million a year while people starve and are homeless. While American workers have become more productive, none of the benefits of this productivity occur to them. That's a fact. In theory, increased productivity due to technological advances was supposed to lead to less work. Facts, because work could be done more efficiently. But in the United States, the opposite has happened. That's a fact. Americans work more than they ever have and more than their peers in other industrialized countries, which less employer support than in the past. That is a fact. The only people working less are super wealthy who live in a way almost comically disconnected from the average American's existence. Although everyday life has become increasingly unaffordable for almost everyone, a new class of private members only and concierge surgeons is emerging in New York City. Ultra exclusive clubs, laundry specialists, on demand helicopter rides, and service that allow users to bid hundreds of dollars for a restaurant reservation are transforming how those with lots of disposable income eat dinner, work out, see the doctor, look after their children, walk their dogs, and get around. Meanwhile, the rest of America is drowning in credit card debt, running their bodies into the ground, chasing success and stability because everything is so expensive. And our hyper capitalist culture tells you your value and happiness are derived from your level of career accomplishment and acquisition of material goods. It starts to almost make sense that people will work so hard to achieve this. Mm, this is so true. This kind of pressure inevitably leads people to overwork and eventually burn out. That is a fact. Burnout is caused by problems on a societal level, dealing with in your particular body, problems at the level of the workplace, policies, norms, work culture, productivity, but also problems on the level of individual self value derived exclusively through work. Oh wow, shoot. Let me see. You get the opposite of what you were promised. The more we acquire, the more we achieve, the less happy we are. That is a fact. I remember when I was making $10.68, I had more with less. Only now you also have the problems of creating mental health and often some sort of chronic illness. We are not designed to live this way, and our bodies are here to remind us of that fact. If you doubt this, read Gamer Matt's latest book, The Myth of Normal: Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. Damn, I'm gonna take a copy of that. Eventually, all your hustle and grinding leads you to a land of self care. You ain't lied about that. A bath bomb, essential oils, a meditation app, or a Thai massage will not fix your problems. This is not to say they can't bring temporary relief. You can't meditate your way out of a 40-hour work week with no child care. Come on! We need something radically different. What most of us need is healing and completely different way of living. We need structural change to how we live in the United States. Until then, I'll be healing and ill. Yeah, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting out of here. Yeah, I'm getting out of here. That was really good. While it may seem I've given up on America, I have not. Partly I still tethered to living here at least part of the time because my husband's job requires him to live in DC. But even if we eventually, when we're able to live in Italy year round, I plan to move there by the end of 2024. What happens to and in the United States will always matter to me. Mm, mm, mm. I'll end with this quote from Barack Obama in his 2020 book of Promised Land. And so the world watches America, the only great power in history made up of people from every corner of the planet, comprising every race, faith, and cultural practice, to see if our experiment in democracy can work, to see if we can do what no other nation has done, to see if we can eventually live up to the meaning of our creed. And that was a damn good article. Well, let me delete all this. Okay. Now, let's get to this. She black. Black people.
Hey, how you doing? I am not looking particularly special today. I just took my little friend Alfie for his walk. Currently, I'm on a luxury pet sit in Australia. But I wanted to come on and talk to you about what actually made me decide to leave the States. So 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I actually forgot about this one situation that happened that made me say, you know what, the hell with this. Like, I'm done. I'm leaving. That's it. My decision's made. Nothing's stopping me from here. So just to give you a little backstory, 2007, 2008 was the year that changed my life. It was the year that I left the States for the first time, right? I traveled internationally to Paris. And that trip changed my life. Up until that point, I thought that the US was the best place in the world. Like, I believed the whole
right, until you go somewhere else. That's right.
The place that everybody wants to be. Right? I'm so lucky. I'm here in the States. I'm from North Jersey, tri-state, represent all of that nonsense. And then I've traveled to Paris. And what I found out was I'm not allergic to apples. Okay. I ate everything under the sun and lost weight. I fell in love with the language, the architecture, the fashions, the dining situation, the way people sat down at tables and they really took their time to eat and enjoy life.
Yep, that's everything a fact.
Just it taught me, that one trip taught me that I didn't know anything about the world. There was so little I really knew about how this world is.
And that's how I felt when I was in Puerto Rico. I saw them enjoying life. They ain't work.
15 months ago, I sold and donated everything I owned in the US to go and travel the world and eventually live somewhere else. But I know for most people, that sounds like a very difficult task to do, mentally, financially, physically. But for me, it was really clear that I wanted to leave. So here are the reasons why I left the United States and wanted to live somewhere else. Number one, cost of living. I lived in New York for about 22 years. I've had 15 plus jobs, working 2 at all times. I was even kicked out of my house at 19 and never went home. So I understand how expensive it is to live in New York on your own. I understand that New York is a more expensive part of the United States than others, but this is generally what it costs nowadays to live in most parts of the United States. I remember spending money on rent, food, car, because it's required basically in the US to own a car. It's a society that's run on the car. All the insurances, healthcare. I was spending on a minimum about $2,500.
Right.
And honestly, I was spending that money on a life that was super repetitive, and I just didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it. I felt like every week was the same thing of doing work, going to the gym, on the weekends seeing a friend or two, and then you just restarted it. So I got tired of spending my money on that sort of life. So I decided to get rid of it and leave. If you followed my journey around the world, you know how much my budget is. I spent roughly $1,500 on everything while traveling. So in a sense, it is cheaper to travel around the world all the time than it is to live statically in the United States.
And that's a fact.
I've experienced so many different cultures, different experiences. I've gotten new perspective on ways of life that were similar and different to what I had in the US, and been able to implement changes that have made me so much happier in those aspects. Number 2 would be the direction of the country. And if there's going to be anything that's controversial about what I'm saying in this video, it's probably going to be this, because there's going to be people that disagree with what I'm saying. But again, like I said earlier, that's totally fine. Now, this is something that I noticed 2 or 3 years ago, that I felt like the country was going in a direction where we were more worried about things going on outside of the United States rather than inside the United States. Like, for example, infrastructure. Did you know that there are 46,000 bridges in the United States that are structurally deficient? But we send so many aid packages all over the world to different countries to help them with their issues. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but don't you think that it...
Not anymore under Trump. No, honey, he cut off all that funding.
And I feel recently in the United States, as Americans, we are so unbelievably divided that we don't care anymore about what makes the country better. We just individually want certain aspects to be better, regardless of how the other side feels. It's about making one particular issue better while ignoring the rest, which may be a reason why it seems like nothing's been done for so long to make the country move forward.
Right.
So I want to ask you, when is the last time you walked into a supermarket or a store and what you were buying was made in the United States?
Facts.
Even though I haven't been in the United States.
Facts. So many people getting out of here.
Ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros, the American dream used to be all about getting the house with the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids. However, that's what the American dream used to be. More recently, the American dream has changed for younger generations. The new American dream is about getting the American paying remote job and then getting the hell out of America. In this last decade or so, we've seen so many younger people, as well as older people, not just Americans, but people from rich developed countries, move to cheaper developing countries.
Facts.
This past decade, we have seen the rise of the digital nomad in multiple countries offering digital nomad visas. And why is this? Why are so many young people leaving rich countries? Well, as someone who has traveled to almost 40 countries around the world and has lived abroad for over 2 years, I think I can speak a lot on this topic. And so in this video, I want to dive into this trend of the new American dream and talk about why young people are leaving rich countries, the reality of the new American dream, and the consequences to the host country. And so let's start off by talking about why young people are leaving rich countries. So as I just said, in the developed world, we've been seeing this trend of people leaving their rich developed countries and moving to cheaper developing countries.
Right, because I'm on my way.
Think about it. It's kind of strange. However, I think that there are 3 logical reasons to this. And the first reason is the developed world is no longer affordable. So if you're watching this video and you're living in a rich developed country, you know that we are in a cost of living crisis.
Facts.
We're living in this moment of time where everything is becoming increasingly unaffordable. I mean, rent, groceries, and cars are all increasingly unaffordable.
Facts.
The developed world is nice and luxurious, but most people can't afford to live in it. Most people can't afford a good quality of life here and are choosing to move abroad.
Facts.
Because their money will go a lot further. I mean, in America, a salary of $40,000 a year doesn't go far. But in Costa Rica, a salary of $40,000 goes so far to the point where you're rich. People are leaving.
See what I'm saying?
Developed countries because the developed world isn't affordable. And people are thinking, I can't afford the American dream here in America, but I can afford it in another country. The dollar and many other Western currencies go extremely far in other countries, and many people are thinking that their only option for a better life, ironically, is leaving the developed world. Now, the second reason is the developed world is too stressful. Now, another problem that's going on,
and that's a fact. It is stressful. Yes.
I have been living overseas for at least 15 years in more than 60 different countries. And while there's certain things that I do miss about my home country of the United States, there's also quite a few things that I don't miss. And as I've been over in Europe for the past couple of months, I've been reflecting a bit on that. And so I want to share with you today some of the things I don't miss so much about the U.S. I think the first thing is not having to drive everywhere. I've had a car since I was learning how to drive when I was 15, or at least had access to a car. And so growing up, I mean, I never took public transportation. I was from a small town in Florida, and you had to drive to go everywhere. But once I started traveling internationally, I realized that you don't actually need a car in many countries because the public transportation is so good. And that's certainly the case here in Europe. You don't need to drive. You can take the bus, the metro, the train, and the trains are so good that you can go to different countries without even needing to get on a plane.
Facts.
System is really good as
Facts.
well. And that's just not the case in the U.S. Yes, we do have public transportation, but it's not as good, and the distances are also really far. So we're not going to get into why the U.S. is designed the way it is and the urban planning, although there are some really good.
Oh shit.
videos on YouTube about that. But if you're outside the city center in a lot of places, then you probably need to have a car, or it's really helpful. And so one of the things I don't miss is having to drive everywhere at least 20-30 minutes to get somewhere, and then having to pay car insurance and gas and everything like that. But of course, I want to rent a car sometimes, and I still enjoy driving, and I like the freedom that having a car provides, and I've always been grateful to have a vehicle since I could drive. But I also like having the option of just being able to hop on a bus or a train and go anywhere. Another thing related to driving that I don't miss is all of the billboards everywhere in the US. I feel like every highway is just filled with advertising. And I really don't notice it that much in other countries. And I've taken the
that don't
bus
bother
and the
me.
train around places in the UK, and I haven't seen any. So I don't know if it's against the law or something, but that's just something very characteristic of the US when I go back, is that I just notice all of the billboards everywhere. And I actually talked about this in another video of how strange it is to see medical billboards, like hospitals advertising their emergency rooms and things like that, which you would never see in other countries. And in paracetamol, which is like a Tylenol, Advil type of painkiller here, it costs 50 cents. 50 cents. I mean, that's how much drugs should cost. They should be affordable for everybody. They should be widely available, if it's something without a prescription, and seems quite simple. But yet in the US, that box would probably be $6 or $8. Another thing that I don't miss about the US is all of the fast food and chain restaurants.
Right.
I grew up on McDonald's, Taco Bell, Burger King, all of that stuff. Thanks, Mom and Dad. But I definitely don't miss it. I mean, sure, that was the 80s and 90s, and it was a big thing then.
I should get more. But you get the gist of why people are leaving.
Collected a rental car in Oakland Airport. It was a 3-hour delay. Why? Because all their rental cars had broken glass from being broken into and things stolen. That's reason number one. It's just, it's not peaceful to be on the edge. It's almost like you're always having to be prepared, like someone's going to pick a fight with you. There was another sign back here. It's the second reason why I would not want to stay in the U.S. right now. It's expensive. And that sign back there said that the rent in New York City has doubled since 2010, and so has the number of homeless people.
Yep.
And it's expensive. But I feel like costs in general, and everyone you talk to, everything is so expensive in the U.S. right now. The third reason is this: quality of life. I just feel like for what we pay in, say, Thailand or even Japan, we get really high quality in return. Right now here, I feel like when I go out to eat, or just in general, the quality does not match the cost. So I feel like I'm overpaid and getting ripped off. I don't mind paying higher prices if the value and the quality matches it. The quality of, say, when you're at a restaurant, the quality of the food, the quality of the service. But I don't feel that here right now. And everywhere you go right now in the U.S., everyone wants a tip.
Right.
Tip even before you get the service. So
Yep.
when I order my coffee on the Starbucks app, see that on the screen? You make the order on the app, you're going to pick up the coffee, but it already asks you for a tip. And it's that way everywhere. So I spend $5 on my 5-shot espresso. And then right there, it gives me an option. Do I want to tip $1, $2, $3, $4, $5? And I hear a lot of people right now in the U.S., they're complaining about tipping. It's great tip. I usually leave a 20% tip. But they're saying right now that it's over the top.
It is. I agree. I agree.
of you have accused us of bashing the United States just because we talk about a lot of the things that really frustrate us about it.
Things have changed so much over the last 30 years, and it is so much more difficult for people in the US and so many other parts of the world. Things are so much more expensive. Life is just more stressful. People aren't getting along. It has just gotten crazy.
We left the United States 6 years ago for several reasons, and our only regret is not doing it sooner.
Our lives are so different now than when we lived in Denver, and the changes are all for the better.
So we're going to tell you why life is better living abroad than in the U.S. But first, hit that subscribe button if you're thinking about moving abroad to a lower cost.
Yes, I'm thinking about getting the hell out of here.
They like to talk to us about what our life is like back in the U.S., why we chose their country. They really appreciate it when we love their country, and they kind of see it through our eyes. It's like a fresh perspective for them.
However, you do need to speak their language. You really ingratiate yourself a lot more if you learn the local language.
Number 8 is you don't need a car. It is so U.S. American to have a car.
That's what that last video said. You don't need a car.
Not looking over our shoulder all the time, looking for people carrying, guns and being afraid.
Yes, and crime has increased all over the world. That is just the reality now, but we are very grateful to be here.
Yeah, this is probably where we're going to get a bunch of comments in the where people say, you're crazy to think it's safer in Latin America than the United States. But I would encourage you to check out our recent video about the safest countries in Latin America from worst to first, because the United States we put in there, it does not rank very well. It's actually toward the bottom of that list.
Number 5 is life is more tranquilo. It is just not nearly as stressful. We are not worried about rushing to work, getting caught in traffic, or dealing with horrible hour-to-hour.
And they sure don't. Puerto Rico taught me that.
Like I used to, because
Puerto Rico taught me that.
Bunch of reasons why I decided to leave the US, give up my 9 to 5, and quit the rat race. The first thing is going to be cost of living. Cost of living in the United States is outrageous. Everyone knows this. Even if you try to live in a low cost of living area, it's still really expensive, and it's getting worse and worse.
Yes.
Like inflation and the economy, the job market, the housing market, everything is just getting so bad in the U.S. As someone who's just trying to get by and raise a family and maybe have a little extra money to go on vacation and buy a few toys or or bullshit you want to spend your money on. We're all being choked out. It feels like it's so hard to get ahead in the US, and it feels like everything is so goddamn expensive. Gas, food, housing, cars, insurance, all of that stuff. Like, it's insane how much we were spending just to live in the United States. Again, we were in a high cost of living area, but we crunched the numbers, and we knew that moving to a lower cost of living area would only save us a tiny bit more. And it wasn't the answer to our problems, because it's almost like the United States figures out a way to get you when you're trying to make your life better. And that sounds cynical, and I'm sure that that's not true, but it did feel a lot like the American dream was dead. We've owned houses, we've had the car, we've had the white picket fence, we had everything that you strive for when you live in America, everything that they try to sell that dream on, we bought into it. And it felt like it was just a trap in order to squeeze as much money out of us. And at the end of the day, it felt like it was just too expensive to live, and the cost of living was just terrible.
I agree.
One of the main reasons, if not the top reason, we left the US was we just couldn't afford it anymore, and we didn't want.
I agree. This is Black Guy. I love his channel. This is Kid Greatness.
And I don't plan on returning anytime soon. Right now, we are in Thailand.
I told you.
Papaya to be Pacific. And I was just sitting here thinking, like a year ago, I was in Thailand, and I went back to America. And now I'm back in Thailand because the quality of life in America is absolutely abysmal now. You cannot live in America. inflation is way too high. From the state I'm from, New Jersey, rent runs you, especially northern New Jersey, rent is going to be plus $2,000. Now let's think about that for a second. The median income in America is about $45,000 to $50,000 a year. Now, how can people afford to spend half of their annual income?
Facts.
We're not even including taxes there. They spend half of their annual income in rent.
Facts.
And then we're not even factoring
Because I'm tired of it.
electricity. In America, you have to have a car, especially like in New Jersey. You're going to need a car to get around. So you got a car note, add an extra $600 to $1,000. Now, look, you have $3,000 gone already of your income. There's no way you can survive. But if you come to a place like Pattaya, Thailand, you can get you a nice apartment for $200 to $400 a month.
Did you hear what I said?
You could be right here on the beach. Like right now, I'm on Pattaya Beach.
For $200 a month.
Property for from $200 to $400 a month.
And he on the
That's
beach.
not possible in America, Canada, UK. It's not happening. Also, it's just that the people out here are happier. What I realized when I went back from traveling the world, because I've been to Tanzania, I lived in Thailand, where we are right now. People are more happier outside of America.
They are.
And I was thinking about this, and then I realized why. America is just one big business. If you really break it down,
Yes.
America is a business, and your status symbol is your income. That's why when you meet people, or people always saying, "Oh, I make six figures. I make six figures. I make high six figures," but you never hear people saying stuff like, "I'm really enjoying my life right now. I'm really happy." You can make a bunch of money in America. That is true. But at what sacrifice does it come making that money? I know a lot of people who make six figures plus, and they absolutely hate their life.
Facts.
And I met many people around the world.
I learned that when I went to Puerto Rico. I saw it. It's another black girl.
Are you wondering if you should leave the United States before the
Abroad
next election?
ability.
Are you tired of just being tired? Are you
Yes.
afraid of the direction the U.S. is going in? Do you feel like you just no longer belong? Well, I left the United States almost 2 years ago, and I have no intentions of going back. And in this video, we're going to discuss why. Like, why would you want to live anywhere else?
Shoot, I'm ready to go.
What about the
I'm ready to go.
These are some of the examples of the questions and pushback I received when I said I wanted to move to the country of Panama. So let's dive into the 12 reasons why I want to live in the United States of America again. And in no particular order, we're starting with patriotism. Patriotism is changing. America's number one. We're trained to say that and believe that in various aspects of our society, like as if the U.S. is the center of the world. Let's listen to some of our sporting championships. The World Series. We only play ourselves. NFL. We're world champions. Again, we only play ourselves. Now, football, aka soccer, that's a world sport. Now, the World Cup, that's truly a global sport where you actually play other countries. You are a global champion. If I had to work until my mid-60s, I'd rather do it in a country that promotes like living life as opposed to a country that promotes work harder. Just
Right.
work harder. Work harder. Here in Panama, I was able to semi-retire early. I quit my 9-to-5 job. My living expenses went down tremendously, and I'm just able to enjoy life. My lifestyle was upgraded. I mean, I couldn't afford this view in the U.S. America, once the beacon of hope and opportunity, no longer feels like the land it used to be. The dream seems tarnished, and the promises feel empty. The rat race, the constant struggle to keep up with the Joneses, it's exhausting, and it's just a life I no longer wanted to live anymore. The media. Whatever happened to ethical reporting and getting the facts straight?
Come on, that's a fact.
When did newscasters start inserting their opinions instead of just reporting on what happened? Or
Exactly.
doing their due diligence before reporting? It just seems as if people are more concerned with agendas and clicks than the truth and valid information. In general, media used to be a source of information, a way to stay informed. But now it feels like a battleground of opinions where facts are often lost in the noise, if there are even facts at all. Racism and extremism. So both racism and extremism exist outside of the United States, but how they're expressed is very different. So you can be killed in the United States for just being black. There are many people who have moved here who know.
I'm trying to just get through some. I got 4 more, so unless some of the, I'm just gonna deal with the black folk that left.
When I actually grew up. So here are my 5 reasons why I decided to leave America. But keep in mind, they're in no particular order. So let's get to it. Number 1, the growing tension and division. The America I grew up in the 80s, that America no longer exists.
Sure don't.
I'm going to be honest with you. When I'm there, or even when I'm watching the news here in Dominican Republic, I can hardly even recognize the country. America, in my opinion, has lost some of their greatest strengths, like their social norm, their traditions, their morals and values. And I say morals and values in quotes because not that it always had morals and values, but man, they're totally lost nowadays. Having lived outside of the country for 2 years, on the outside looking in, looking at America, it looks like a free-for-all. Everybody seems to be on edge. I feel uncomfortable when I'm out in public when I'm there. Here in Dominican Republic, I don't feel uneasy out in public. You see people enjoying themselves, having fun. Nobody seems to be on edge here. But in America, oh man, everybody's on edge. Number 2,
right,
the high cost of living.
Come on, that's what I'm talking about.
It's almost impossible for people to just live a normal life, especially in major metropolitan cities like Miami, New York, LA, Chicago, Houston. It's just making it almost impossible. Before moving to the Dominican Republic, we lived in the Fort Lauderdale area, and our monthly expenses came out to be around $4,600. That included the rent, utilities, car insurance, health insurance, you name it, it all was included in that. When we moved here to Dominican Republic, we cut our expenses down by 50%. And at the same time,
see, that's what I'm talking about. Cut your expenses down to 50%. It's time to get the hell out of here.
And to be honest, we could have cut our expenses down by 65%, but we choose to live where we live. We wanted the same type of accommodations similar to what we had back in Florida, which leads me to point number 3, the continuous rat race. And the funny thing about this one, you don't really realize you're running a race until it's almost too late. You're just subconsciously reacting, living the same life over and over each day, chasing this superficial goal that doesn't have any real purpose, at least for most of us. Yes, it's okay to have a big house and a nice car, but at what expense? Quality of life, which many of us have sacrificed and still sacrificing just to pretend we have money, only to create more and more debt. So tell me this, what's the point of working just to pay bills? Here in DR, we have a better quality of life. Being able to cut down on the expenses has allowed us to enjoy our lives a little bit more. We're able to save a little bit more. We're able to invest a little bit more than what we did when we were in Fort Lauderdale. Number 4, the excessive and senseless violence, from mass shootings, gun violence, to police brutality. This part of America, in my opinion, has gotten way out of control. And the thought of me raising my daughter in this environment and that nonsense, I'm telling you, as a parent, I'm terrified. I mean, think about sending them off to school and in the back of your mind having a thought that they may not even make it home.
That is true. But I'm only going to, a lot of black folks have left America. It's time to go. This going to be me to sell everything. and go.
Good morning. Feels so good to be back vlogging. I missed you guys. I think my brain is still on go mode because I've been going. Sorry, I'm trying to get my camera to stay in the right position. I moved out of my apartment a few days ago. I put my stuff in storage. I sold my car.
Ooh.
I completely just changed my whole life. And I think my brain still hasn't processed it. And I still kind of feel like this heightened sense of, okay, what's next? Like, what do I have to get next done off my to-do list? But I'm here and I can breathe a little bit and I can relax. It was actually my birthday when I booked my ticket here. I had literally no plans of doing this leading up into my birthday. I kind of had a feeling, like you guys know if you guys watch my last vlog, there just was a lot of craziness happening in my life. And I just found myself really I was really sitting with myself and taking time to really think about what do I actually want out of life? What do I want in this next chapter for me? And I found myself moving in certain directions. As you guys saw, I was thinking about buying a house. I was not just thinking about buying a house. I went through the steps of buying a house. I've been on trips quite a few times. I've traveled quite a bit, but I've never really given myself the chance to just leave the US and just kind of go for it and just see what happens and just explore, truly actually just be free.
Yes. Damn.
And when you're paying rent and you have a car note and you have bills and all these things, traveling is fun, but it's always this temporary, it's like a vacation, and I've always wanted to experience kind of being without anything, without.
Because she just take a little bit too long. This is the last video. I didn't realize I had all this. Just the last one.
Tonight at 11, this is a fascinating trend, though. So more Americans are leaving the United States for good, according to international experts.
Yes, our chief investigative reporter, Eric Flagg, he packed a bag and went in search of the reasons why Americans are leaving America. Do you ever think about hopping on a plane?
Yes.
And never coming back?
Yes.
Corey and Matthew Strunk from Calvert County have.
We have joked that, oh my gosh, we have got to get out of here.
Jen Dewberry from Prince George's County, too.
Wouldn't it be something to be the granny who lives in Portugal?
International travel experts say they aren't alone. Americans' interest in moving out of the U.S. is on the rise. So I hopped a plane and traveled to a Living Abroad conference in Atlanta to find out why.
I think people are beginning to wonder if the U.S. is as great as they always thought it was.
Right.
Jennifer Stevens is the executive director for International Living, a worldwide resource for Americans moving overseas.
And when we talk about these modern conveniences,
In October, International Living hosted this boot camp for people looking to retire abroad.
Where are you from?
Texas.
Texas.
You okay?
Maryland.
Hundreds paid for access to information on everything from buying a home in another country to finding an expat community in dozens of overseas nations. So countries are reacting to this trend.
Absolutely.
And recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Countries are doing that.
Recruiting, Stevens says, by loosening restrictions on travel and work visas.
Yes.
Allowing Americans to live abroad for years without renewing the visa, or in some cases, indefinitely. Will this be forever?
This is forever.
Becky Gonnell and her husband live in Marble Falls, Texas, but are planning to leave in the next 12 to 24 months.
Not sure if you have the answer to this. Schools, as a joke, he had said if President Biden got elected, we're gone. We're out of here. And it happened. And
you're out of here.
And we're out of here.
Y'all did the right thing. You did the right thing.
Pushing Americans on both sides of the aisle to pack their bags. International Living reported 1,000% increase in web traffic after Roe versus Wade was overturned. Meanwhile, the 2016 election of Donald Trump, George Floyd protests, and the COVID-19 pandemic all significantly drove up clicks for Where Can I Live? Consulting business for people who need help with the logistics of moving to another country.
Moving abroad for most people is a huge undertaking.
I zoomed in Where Can I Live CEO Alison Johnson from her home in Barcelona, Spain. She told me politics and divisiveness aren't the only factors pushing Americans to leave the U.S.
These include cost of living in general.
Yes.
At the moment. Cost of healthcare comes up so often.
Yes.
Safety and security.
Yes.
Especially those with smaller kids.
But back at that conference in Atlanta, people I spoke with said the moving abroad trend is less about people who are fed up with our country and more about Americans looking for a different life experience. And then there are the growing number of digital nomads, Americans who can work remotely, even internationally, post-pandemic.
It was more like, okay, I don't have to make a lot of money. I don't have to work too hard.
Jessica Ramesh now calls Panama home.
I think that there's always a risk when you're running from instead of running to. I think your reasons for going abroad have to be deeper than that.
Okay, so the State Department told us they can't say how many Americans are currently living abroad. U.S. citizens are not required to register travel to a foreign country. Now, previous State Department estimates put the number around 9 million people, including active military members stationed abroad. Well, Sunday night at 11 o'clock, Eric will look into a growing movement to recruit voters who are not living.
I'm telling you, it's time to get up out of here. It is. And enjoy your life, and you don't have to work as hard. That's all I'm saying. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I'll be right back with this mayor. Man, listen, the youngest mayor ever elected, and he was a pimp and a drug kingpin. You can't make this up.